Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day 359, Saturday, March the 3rd, 2018. Thank you so much for tuning in to this weekend edition. Wow, pretty big news day today. We have one major breaking story that came down on Friday, and so a lot of you people have probably already heard about it, but if you haven't, I'll lay it on you now. There was an article that appeared in the Washington Times on Friday. It was an op-ed piece that was written by James Lyons. Now, some of you may be familiar with James Lyons. He's he's a retired Navy admiral, former commander of the U.S. Pacific Fleet, and he's kind of an activist as well. And he's one of the good guys. Some people say he has gone kind of to the conspiracy theorist side. So he kind of walks that line, I guess, probably like a lot of people. A lot of times when you question just about anything of the deep state, you're labeled a conspiracy theorist. But he's clearly not an idiot. He was the former, admiral of the U.S. Pacific Fleet. And obviously he's got the credentials. But he's commenting on this particular article on the Seth Rich situation. And he says quite a few things in the article that are alleged but not everything proven, things that we've been kind of assuming are proven, but are still kind of not really proven, but we assume they're true. But he drops two new pieces of information in this article which have never been heard before. He actually does kind of give his source, but whether or not it's actually confirmed, it's hard to say. But it's certainly well worth commenting on and telling you about. So, in this particular article, James Lyons is talking about a conversation he had with Ed Butowski. Now remember, Ed Butowski was the individual who went to the Riches, Seth Rich's parents, Joel and Mary, and was trying to work with them to find the killer of their son, Seth, and he hired Rod Wheeler. It was Mr. Butowski, I believe, that was also paying or getting the money to pay Rod Wheeler. At the same time, what you had going on was right after the Seth Rich murder, the DNC hired a PR guy, high-dollar PR guy out of Washington named Brad Bauman. His job was to silence the Riches. His job was also to keep them from talking to people in the media or anyone who would question the official story. So he said he was doing the pro bono work, but we know that he was actually being hired and was being paid by the DNC. Guys like that don't do pro bono work. He's out of Washington, D.C. The Riches live in like Iowa or something. So nobody really believed the Brad Bauman front story. And he was around there for a very long time. He might still be in play. I don't know. I haven't heard much about him recently, but we know he was in play as late as this past fall because he did a couple interviews with this other neocon, Berkman, Jack Berkman, when Jack Berkman was trying to get his investigation going. So these are the players that we have. So Mr. Butowski, who we haven't heard from since that whole flare-up between him and Rod Wheeler and Fox News, and then Rod Wheeler wants to sue Fox News because it was a discrepancy over comments that Rod Wheeler had made. And so there was a bunch of flack that got thrown up. And then the story, I think there was a lot of pressure put on Sean Hannity. He was the only one at Fox News that would really talk very much about it. And then a lot of flack came up and it kind of died down and we haven't really heard anything. It's kind of gone away since then. Then the next thing that happened was this past recent late summer, early fall. We saw this little clip of the interview with Seymour Hersh, where Seymour Hersh said he had an FBI informant who had his eyes on the documents showing that the FBI knew that Seth Rich had been in contact with Wikileaks. Hersh went on to say that his source told him that Rich had sent a sample for Wikileaks to look at and then said, if you like what you see and you want the rest, I want money. And that's pretty much what we learned from the Seth Rich, Cy Hersh revelation back this past late summer, early fall. And since then, everything had kind of gone silent on the Seth Rich front. So a lot of these things are mentioned in this article. And so these are a lot of things that we know or assume we know, think we know, maybe not 100% proven, but are fairly logical assumptions that a lot of people are making. But the new revelations kind of work in this way. So James Lyons is writing in this article, and he's talking about Ed Butowski, who he claims or states is an acquaintance of the Rich family. We know that's true. And he says that in a conversation he had with the parents, and he actually wrote down the exact time, that the conversation he had with the Rich family with Seth Rich's parents, Joel and Mary, Mr. Butowski claims that Joel and Mary Rich confirmed that Seth Rich transmitted the DNC emails to Wikileaks. Now, that would be a major revelation, because up until this time, particularly Mrs. Rich, but to a large extent also Mr. Rich, have not really wanted to go there, and their son, Seth's brother, Aaron, has definitely not wanted to go there. He's done everything he could to shut down anybody looking into his brother's death, other than looking at it from the official narrative. But to have Joel and Mary Rich tell Ed Butowski that they now believe or know that their son was the one who transmitted the DNC emails to WikiLeaks is a major revelation. Now, he doesn't say what their source was, whether they were told this by the FBI or the DC Metro Police, or whether it's just something they believe because they've watched a lot of videos, maybe mine. He doesn't really say why they would say that or why they suddenly have commented, because they've never been willing to really do that. They've been willing to go to little rallies and things locally where they're trying to raise money, to get money to investigate, hire investigators, or whatever. But they've always been on the official narrative story, and their PR spokesman, Brad Bauman, hired by the DNC to represent them, has always questioned anytime anyone says anything other than the official narrative. It's Brad Bauman that comes out and says, well, that's a conspiracy theory. Mr. and Mrs. Rich, that's insulting to them, and all that kind of thing. So we've never really had a lot of direct, honest communication with the Riches. They've had this sort of shield put in front of them, and that shield is Mr. Bauman and the DNC. And we notice that Mr. Bauman and the DNC and others have not been doing very much at all to try to find the killer of Seth Rich. All their focus has been on protecting Seth Rich's parents or shielding them from being able to have access to people who might ask real questions or conduct a real investigation. So this is a very interesting revelation that Seth Rich's parents would make this statement confirming that Seth transmitted the DNC emails to WikiLeaks. Maybe they've just come to this conclusion after all this time. They've finally come to this conclusion on their own. This is all we can assume at this point, unless we get information otherwise. The article says also that the intel community knows that Seth Rich and his brother, Aaron, downloaded the DNC emails and was paid by WikiLeaks. And that's going to the WikiLeaks thing. But Aaron, this is the first time he's come into play as being a possible partner with his brother, Seth, in, getting this stuff to WikiLeaks. But we're also learning that that Aaron Rich, Seth's brother, works for Northrop Grumman, a defense contractor with deep ties to the intelligence community. Should also be noted that Mr. Clovis also worked for Northrop Grumman, who, of course, is the guy who brought in Papadopoulos and Carter Page to the Trump campaign. So Northrop Grumman pops up here. That's who Aaron works for. And it appears here that they were paid. Now, maybe that's why Aaron, Seth's brother, didn't want an investigation, because someone might learn that he had come into some money. Maybe Seth had also come into some money, and people would start asking questions about how he would come into this money right at the time when the documents, the emails are leaked to WikiLeaks. We also have Julian Assange, who says that he has proof that Russia did not hack the DNC, but no one seems to be interested. We have Kim.com saying he has proof that Russia was not the leaker and that Seth Rich was the leaker, and he knows because he was part of it. And no one seems to be interested in that. His attorneys sent 2 letters to Bob Mueller, Uncle Bob, the special executioner, but no one wants to talk to Kim.com. No one wants to talk to Julian Assange. So this is probably the biggest bombshell article that we have seen come out of the Seth Rich thing here in quite some time. We learn now that Seth and Mary Rich, if this is true, that Seth and Mary Rich do believe that Seth Rich was the WikiLeaks source. And they're not happy about it because they believe that that handed the election to Trump, and they're not supporters of Trump. They're Democrats. They supported Hillary. So they're disappointed that what Seth did helped elect Trump. Then we have Aaron working for, Northrop Grumman, the military-industrial complex, ties to the intelligence community, which explains his behavior and why he didn't want anyone to look into this. And we're learning now that both of them were involved, not just Seth, but his brother Aaron as well, and that they may have been paid and received some money for leaking to WikiLeaks, which is not unusual. A lot of WikiLeaks sources do get paid. So that's probably the most interesting thing that's happened in the last 24 to 36 hours. You can read that article over there at the Washington Times. There's a lot of people commenting on it. H.A. Goodman has a pretty good video where he comments on it. And that's news. I would think maybe in the next week or two, someone will actually be able to get to the riches, unless Mr. Baumann is still there, being the human shield between the truth and the Seth Rich's parents. It's been going on for quite some time, but maybe he's still in place. I don't know. But maybe the Riches are free to speak, but maybe they're afraid because they're not coming out publicly. I mean, this would be a major revelation. You would think it would be something they would almost do a news conference and say, we've just come to the conclusion and we now believe our son was one of the leakers. Of course, their other son, Aaron, was probably fighting them on that and doesn't want that to happen. So you got to wonder what's going on with Aaron. Has he been compromised? Is he potentially compromised in having taken the money? He doesn't want the embarrassment and all this sort of thing. So more questions. We get a couple interesting things that pop up here, but it only raises more questions as far as I'm concerned. So we'll have to see if anyone follows up on this and if anyone can actually get Seth Rich's parents on video saying that they believe that Seth Rich was the leaker. That's kind of what I need to see, because right now this is all just, Mr. Lyons, former Navy Admiral, writing an op-ed in the Washington Times saying that his conversation with Ed Butowski, that Ed Butowski revealed this to him. But Ed Butowski, in the Fox News Rod Wheeler issue, was having his credibility questioned as to, the type of statements he was making, whether or not they're factual or what have you. So there's question marks around all of this. But it's a very interesting revelation that we certainly need to look at. Because as you know, I believe that the Seth Rich downloading that material from the DNC and providing it to WikiLeaks really was a major beginning of building the Trump-Russia collusion narrative to cover what was going to be learned from the information that was leaked. And I believe, of course, Seth Rich was murdered as a result of that. Trump has come up with a new nickname for Jeff Sessions. He's calling him Mr. Magoo. Oh boy. Well, I'm sorry, Mr. President, but that one has been taken by me. To me, Senator McCain is Senator Magoo. Now, Sessions could also be a Mr. Magoo, but he could be a lot of other things. But I guess Trump now is calling Sessions Mr. Magoo. I still call McCain Senator Magoo. And I haven't come up with a great nickname for Sessions other than to describe him as the overachiever and the eager beaver, the Attorney General. Chuck Ross from the Daily Caller. The FBI agents interviewed Huma Abedin in December of 2016, more than a month after the close of the Rotten Reverend Clinton email investigation. That interview was done by Peter Spenstrokhanis and David Loffman. Of course, David Loffman resigned and will probably be indicted. David Loffman. So Strzok and David Loffman did the interview with Huma Abedin. Emails show that Huma knew about Clinton's private email server. However, when she was being interviewed by Strzok and Loffman, she said she didn't know about the server at that time. So she was lying. We also have Cheryl Mills making the exact same statement, saying she wasn't aware of the private server, despite the fact that we have emails showing that she also knew about the private server. So we now know exactly when we didn't know before exactly when that interview occurred, but we now know that interview occurred with Huma a month after they had closed the investigation. That's awfully strange. It's almost like they went back after the fact and said, what if this gets questioned, or what if people start scrutinizing this? We need to cover our bases, so we better have some evidence to back our position, because we never went out and interviewed these witnesses or put them under oath, or we gave immunity. We did all this stuff, but we better cover our bases and at least ways get these people on record. So they went back after the fact to try to get some supporting evidence for the actions they took, which they knew were illegal. They compromised a criminal investigation of the Rotten Reverend Clinton. They fixed it for her. This was a part of the actions they took to cover up the fix. We have more from Chuck Ross at the Daily Caller. He's stating that the IG, the Inspector General Horowitz, the custodian, will reveal authorized leaks by McCabe to the media, and that he also misled investigators about media disclosures. Well, yeah, I think we know that, and because we know from the text messages between Peter Spenstrokhanis and Lisa Page that that's exactly what they were doing. They were commenting in real time on an article that was released by the Wall Street Journal, which they had just fed to the Wall Street Journal and other publications as well. And they, of course, talked about meeting with Andy McCabe, and the insurance policy and all of this. So obviously, Andrew McCabe knew about the leaks and was part of the leaks. It was part of the overall frame-up. What was going on here. But so this is really nothing new. And I guess my thoughts on this are, yeah, this is probably likely criminal behavior by McCabe. Certainly could land him into getting indicted, but he did far, far worse. Yeah, he okay, we're getting there. Yeah, he contributed, was participating in the leaking of stories to the media to cover up the Hillary email investigation and to frame Trump. But to just say and stop there and say, well, yeah, he's guilty of misleading investigators and authorizing leaks to the media, yeah, but the bigger question is, why? Why was he doing that? What was the purpose of that? What was the goal of that? What was the operation that action was supporting? I certainly hope that what we're not looking at here is that we're going to get some actions that were taken by deep state operatives at the FBI and DOJ, that we're not just going to be told, yeah, they did these things and these things and these things, which are all things they did, but and they're kind of bad, but they're not the big enchilada. We're missing the big picture here. So I hope that this is not what the IG report is going to tell us, a bunch of sort of minor things that completely overlook the big things, or that we don't look further and ask the questions, why was McCabe authorizing Page been stroking us to release this stuff? Why was he misleading investigators? That's the question you have to ask. Why did he do these things? There was a reason. That is where you need to dig. And I certainly hope that after a year and 4 months plus, that the Inspector General, Horowitz, the custodian, is not going to just drop something like this on us and expect that that's going to satisfy our palate for justice. It's not. No way. October the 30th, 2016, article in the Wall Street Journal was one of the ones that we're talking about. And that particular article that Strzok and Page are referring to was about the Clinton Foundation. And that's the article that the IG is actually referring to. In this particular case, on this specific thing that was pointed out, this article written by Chuck Ross, this is the leak that they're talking about, because that's the one that Page and Strzok are describing, the one I just mentioned, the Wall Street Journal one. And it was an article that that Strzok and Page put out, which made it sound like the FBI, the DOJ were conflicted over the Clinton Foundation investigation, and that there was nothing there, and that type of thing. So it was a planted story. So that's the thing that they're talking about. But that's minor compared to many. There were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of leaked stories, fake stories, created out of thin air that were then fed to media organizations, many media organizations, from AOL, Yahoo News, Washington Post, New York Times, Vanity Fair. You go right down the list, 50, 60, 70 media organizations every single day, putting out literally 5, 10, 15, 20 stories a day. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stories. Hundreds and hundreds. So this one story this is just the one that we're discussing. We got to go much deeper than that, Mr. Horowitz. Matt Gaetz has told Judge Jeanine Pirro that Sessions does not answer Congress's questions, that he defers to Rodenstein or his aides. Gaetz says Sessions is guilty of dereliction of duty and that we need a special counsel or we need for Sessions to resign. We also just had Nunes and Jordan talking about the fact that when they go to talk to Sessions, he acts like he knows nothing about anything that's going on because he has taken himself out of it. He's literally out of it. And Rosenstein doesn't come in and brief him. Ray doesn't come and brief him. The other people investigating don't come and brief him. Sessions is basically taking himself out of the game. He's sitting over here. He doesn't even know this stuff. So Jordan and Gaetz and other people go in and talk to him, and he doesn't want to talk about it. He says, I'm recused. You have to talk to Rodenstein. I don't know anything about it. He's put himself into a... He's taken himself out of the game, okay? And that is what it looks like. Unless, like many people in the comment section believe, he's playing possum. We're going to find out. Well, prosecutors have filed the 4th extension in the Awan case. They're now wanting another extension because both parties are assessing their options. My. My. The Awan case will never, ever probably go anywhere because what would be learned in the Awan case would be extremely embarrassing and would show the incompetence, the negligence, or the criminal liability on Democrats, on the intel community, and so many more. I mean, this is what this is all about. They do not want to have to come out and tell the truth about what was going on with the Awans because it's embarrassing to the deep state and to a lot of Democrats and probably even some Republicans. That's what's going on here. They will push this thing out forever and ever and ever until we forget, or until they think we'll forget. But what can we do? 2 of the FISA judges who rubber-stamped the FISA surveillance warrants signed by Comey, McCabe, and Yates are now identified. They are Judge Conway and Judge Raymond Dearie, both appointed by Chief Justice Roberts. Question: were these judges duped? What did they know? Why haven't the judges taken action knowing that they were misled? I stated about 2 weeks ago in a video that, again, these judges cannot be this stupid. These judges cannot be this incompetent. These are district court judges, federal judges. I find it hard to believe that they could be this easily duped. And now, since the Nunes memo came out, we know that they were duped. We know that they were misled. We know that there was criminal activity on behalf of the FBI, the DOJ, at the highest levels to mislead the FISA court. The FISA court judges now have an obligation to call these people in and to hold them in contempt of court. And even additional charges can be filed against them for misleading the FISA court. As I said 2 weeks ago, I don't trust these FISA court judges or the FISA court. I think the FISA court should be abolished. It's not a court. A court is a place where you have a judge and a jury, and you have two sides who come in and present their cases, and they get to cross-examine each other's witnesses, and the jury gets to make a ruling. In a FISA court, there's only one side, and that's the government side. There is no jury. It's just a judge who's a politician. Judges are politicians in robes. One of two things is going on here. Either the judges are derelict in their duties because they're not doing due diligence and following up and prosecuting or levying penalties on these people who lied to them on the FISA application or misled them or duped them. They're either criminally negligent themselves as judges for allowing that to happen, or they were part of the plot, or bought into the plot, or went along with the plot, or something. We need to look now at the FISA court itself. It too appears to have been compromised, along with the FBI and the DOJ, the State Department, and God knows who else. This whole thing is rotten. Uncle Bob, the special executioner, Mueller, is now investigating Ivanka Trump. Why not? Of course, I just mentioned to you earlier that Sam Clovis was the man who brought Papadopoulos into the Trump campaign as an unpaid foreign policy advisor. But we now learn that he also brought in Carter Page. We need to look closer at Clovis. I did a in-depth look at Clovis. He was a former pilot, military pilot, veteran Air Force pilot, was served in the North African Command, fairly high level, got out of the military, worked for the military-industrial complex, Northrop Grumman, same place as Aaron Rich, close connections to the military intelligence and the intelligence community at large. We also know that he then became a Tea Party activist, and that he has a radio show now. He was forced to leave his position in the Ag Department because he was caught up in the Mueller investigation. So it's hard to know what Mr. Clovis's motivations were, or hard to know who he was working for. But when you look at the timeline, when Clovis came in, when he brought in Papadopoulos, when he brought in Carter Page, that was at the time when there was a Republican paying for opposition research through Fusion GPS. Clovis's connections would be to the anti-Trump Republicans. It just takes a few moments to let your mind adjust. Start thinking about that for a moment. I'll have more on that in a couple of weeks is something I'm working on. Believe me. It's going to get deep with Mr. Clovis, Mr. Papagalopoulos. Is H.R. McMaster the next one to go? Sources are saying that Trump wants Bolton, but Mattis wants some guy named Biegun, Stephen Biegun, who is a NWO think tanker and auto industry executive who's a confidant of Condoleezza Rice. We also have a new poll out showing that 0.5% of Republicans and Democrats who have been polled think the Russia meddling is a non-issue. Less than 1% of Republicans and Democrats polled think it's an issue. Only 1.4% are interested in impeaching Trump. That's Republicans and Democrats. Mostly, they're interested in immigration, border security, taxes, gun control / Second Amendment issues. Bernie Sanders' campaign has been fined $14,500 for coordinating with the Australian Labor Party. How about that, my Australian subs? How about that, guys? Probably doesn't surprise you. This was during the 2016 election. Apparently, Sanders accepted illegal campaign contributions from the Australian Labor Party, and so he's going to fork over $14,500. Of course, they haven't seemed to come to any conclusion on the fact that the DNC colluded with Ukrainian officials to get dirt on Manafort and Trump. Compliments of Alexandra Chalupa, an actual paid person with the DNC. You know, you get the feeling that anyone associated with the Clintons are like a mafia, and they're like made men. You know, once you get like in the mafia, you're a made man that nobody can touch you. You get the feeling the Clintons are like made men. Them or anyone around them, you can't touch them, I guess. Maybe that will come to an end. Devin Nunes says has only had one response to his letter, and that was Rice's lawyer's letter to his 10 questions, which he says is not good enough. So, this week, Devin Nunes will send out a slew of subpoenas for open hearings in Congress. He wants these public open hearings, and those 10 questions he asked about the dossier and all that type of stuff, we went through those questions here. Those are going to have to be answered now in a public forum, open hearings, with the cameras rolling, and all of us watching, including C-SPAN. That's what Devin Nunes is going to be sending out the subpoenas, and they're not going to give him the backdoor treatment. No. They're going to testify in open hearings, because none of this information is classified or reveals sources and methods. It's just about what they knew about the dossier, who they shared it with, or who shared it with them. Now, this issue with Jeff Sessions is probably the most divisive issue that we have right now on my channel. I have a lot of people who really like Sessions, think he's playing possum, think he's actually the white hat. They think he's working with the IG. There's evidence to support that. That he's actually on Trump's team, and then he's playing a game. He's looking for cover. These are all valid, and people who hold that position, it's all valid. But we also have on the other side people who despise Sessions, people who think he never should have been appointed. I'd be in that group. It's not so much what he's done now; it's what he knew before he accepted the job. Knowing what he knew, he shouldn't have accepted the job. But since he did, he's the Attorney General. Why is it such a big problem? Here is why it's such a big problem. Even if Trump wants to fire him, he can't. Because we already know that there has been a large enough number of senators who've said that if Trump fires Sessions, they will not confirm his replacement. And if Trump fires Sessions, who becomes the Attorney General, the acting Attorney General? Rodenstein. You get Rodenstein. You fire Sessions, you get Rodenstein. And then you get the majority of senators who have to confirm a new Attorney General who've stated they will not do so. You'll be left with Rodenstein. That is the place we find ourselves in. As Sticks Hexenheimer would say, between a cock and a hard place. That's where we are. That's where Trump is. And that's why I say, regardless of how you feel about the Sessions issue, we don't have any choice. We have to sit back and wait for the IG, see what happens, see what Sessions does about it, and then we can go from there. But if you fire Sessions, you get Rodenstein. Thank you for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with the Sunday edition of TowerGate. Y'all take care. Bye.